because I am impressed, happy and surprised, and quite frankly I am glad to take a break from the other nerve-wracking things. A few days ago, the Legends of Runeterra team released a new video, and there they talked about everything that's coming in 2021. This can really be boiled down to 3 new things. We are getting Yordles. After the Yordles, there is a new expansion that originally wasn't even planned to be released. We'll get to that suspiciousness at the end of this video. But more importantly, we got new Lab of Legends. Now, before we dive deeper into this, let me give you some context as to where I stand when it comes to Lab of Legends. I personally believe that Legends of Runeterra is a brilliant game. The issue is that before Legends of Runeterra, I have played Hearthstone for quite a while, and honestly, that game burned me when it comes to the competitive side. I did play Hearthstone just like every mortal being, and eventually it burned me. That's why these days I don't play Legends of Runeterra that much. That is when it comes to the PvP. You see, I don't know if this is true, I only heard it from Nicky Boy, so if this is wrong, go to him. But apparently, recently, the PvE side of this game got bigger than the PvP side. In other words, it seems like more people are playing Lab of Legends than PvP. And I believe here's the reason why. When it comes to me, ironically, even though this is a game where you have to build your own deck, I don't like building my own deck. I prefer having the deck built for me and then I just try to play with it well. Or at the very least, I don't like building it from scratch. And that's why Lab of Legends is so successful. There you already have a deck, but you only add to it. And on top of that, let's be honest, roguelite games are really popular, so that's why Lab of Legends is so good. Lastly, I wanna mention one more thing. When it comes to Lab of Legends, it seems like that game was always following one particular game which a lot of people know about. A game which I personally sank about 200 hours into. And that is Slay the Spire. A card game where you crawl through dungeons and you expand your deck just like you do in Lab of Legends. And because I sank a lot of hours into that game, it should be obvious that I really liked it. So you know why I'm really happy right now? Because Riot did this. I really didn't think they would be doing this. But Riot actually took Lab of Legends and they turned it into a separate game. Now, right now it is definitely not perfect, it is pretty much in the beta phase, and now it serves as a base framework of the gameplay. But seeing that Riot recognized the fact that a lot of people are playing Lab of Legends, I am so happy that Riot actually put a lot of resources into this. I truly believe that Lab of Legends can become something big, just like what happened with TFT and League. But enough chitter chatter, let's actually talk about what's happening with this game mode. Lab of Legends The Saltwater Scourge is really just Lab of Legends 2.0. It is the same game mode on steroids. Right now there are only 3 playable champions, Misfortune, Twisted Fate and Tahm Kench. After you pick one of these, you are dropped onto a map, where the path is randomly generated. This is where Riot really embraced the roguelite elements. Everything is randomly generated, so every playthrough should feel different. Whether that is the case right now, we'll get to that in just a moment. But the base framework that they have right now is actually really cool. Just like in something like Slay the Spire, as you move around the map you can encounter 4 different things. A battle, a shop, a healer or a special event. After a battle you get some gold and experience. When you get to a shop you can spend that gold. A healer allows you to heal or remove a card from your deck which you don't want. And lastly, special encounters are usually some kind of a buried chest or a special merchant. Having this for the base of all the different encounters is actually really good, you don't really need anything else. Slay the Spire in comparison, for example, has the exact same thing. You fight, you heal, you buy, or something special happens. But now let's get into more details. Gold is fairly obvious. You get gold for winning fights and then you can spend it in stores. When you get to a store, there is always a top shelf and a bottom shelf. The reason being is probably because on a mobile phone the text would be really small and so they separated the shop into 2 categories. But regardless, in this shop you can buy new cards for your deck, and you can also upgrade them. At the top you can see that there is always multiple in stock, but the first one will always be more expensive, because after buying the card you automatically also enchant the other cards in your deck. Besides gold you also get XP for winning. This allows you to level up, and at different levels you get different things, with the level cap currently being level 8. I noticed that you always get new powers at levels 3, 5 and 8. These powers are the same ones you get in Lab of Legends after defeating a boss. And during the other levels you get to add a champion into your deck at level 2 and 6, and the rest is pretty much about adding and upgrading different cards. The last thing we can mention is that while Gangplank is always the final boss, the boss in the middle is different every single time. Even though so far I always got Karma. And I have to say, these bosses actually feel like proper bosses. Gangplank even has phase 2 when he drops to 20 health. I would love to see more encounters like that. And when it comes to the middle boss, the point of you seeing what kind of boss it is so that you can build a deck around it. For example, when you fight Karma, from the very beginning you both have 10 mana. This means that Karma gets automatically enlightened and your low cost cards are pretty useless. So it would be a good idea to build your deck around higher cost cards. I am yet to encounter a different boss, so I have no idea what the other ones do. And that's really the base framework of this game. I am really happy, it is really promising, but they can do a lot to it still. And because I know that they are listening to feedback, let's go through the things that could get better. Once again, as someone who has spent a lot of time in roguelites, and especially something like FTL or Slay the Spire, which is pretty much exactly what this kind of roguelite game is, I feel like my opinion may be based on something that is actually useful. So first of all, my first issue with this game mode is that you don't really feel that much more powerful as you progress through it. The point of roguelites is that over time you get more and more powerful depending on taking chances. You usually know what kind of powers you are looking for and you build the power of your character around a gimmick. In Slay the Spire, for example, you can have a deck around dealing a lot of small amounts of damage or just very powerful slow hits. Or, you know, around dozens of other builds. But in Lab of Legends, you never feel like you are actually building a deck around a gimmick. Because the cards are really random and the powers are random as well, you always get offered 3 random cards with 3 different powers and they very rarely fit your deck. For example, let's imagine that at the very beginning you somehow manage to get the Lurker power. This means that from now on you wanna build your deck around lurkers. The issue is, throughout my 3 entire playthroughs, I managed to get like 3 lurkers. That's because every time you find a card, it is randomly chosen from like 100 different cards. And the chances of you getting the one you need is really low. And I believe there is an easy way to change this issue with randomness, even though RNG is a big part of this game. First of all, to really make us feel powerful. Besides the new powers which you get at the different levels, at the very beginning of the game, just like in the original Lab of Legends, just let us pick one power to start with. The most fun you have in Lab of Legends is by combining the different powers. That's where the really overpowered fun comes from. You wanna see what happens if you spawn a Poro, but the Poro also gets 2/2 every time you spawn one. It is fun to see these kinds of combinations. And I understand that it all comes down to RNG, but if you don't know what kind of deck you wanna build from the beginning, you don't know what to focus on and you don't feel powerful at the end. So change number 1, give us one more power which you pick at the very beginning of the game. Change number 2 comes to the cards. I am fine with picking cards that were randomly chosen for me, but it would be way better if besides choosing a card which you wanna add to your deck, you also had the option to choose a card from your deck and get an extra copy of it. The way you can balance this is that if you pick a new card which you wanna add into your deck, you get 3 copies of it. But if you duplicate a card in your deck, you only get 1 extra copy. That way, by only getting 1 copy at a time, you can't give powers to one specific card and then just keep duplicating it. Or you can, but you won't have that many cards in your deck and you run the risk of running out of cards. Also, either way, this would mean that the player would actually get way more powerful, especially with the fact that at the beginning of the game you would choose your own new power. But what's the way to deal with this? Make the game harder. And that's really what I wanna see. Make the game harder, force people into going for cheesy builds, but also make the cheesy builds easier to get to. Once again, this is where the satisfying power of roguelite games comes in. You wanna feel powerful, but at the same time, you also wanna feel like the enemy is getting powerful. And speaking of power, I hate how the upgrades work out. Once again, when you get to upgrade a card and give it a special power, it is all random. You can get a totally new card which has nothing to do with your deck, or you can get extra 3 copies of a card which you already have in your deck and upgrade it at the same time. The gap between those 2 scenarios is actually really massive. So, here's another proposition. The RNG will come down to what upgrade for the cards you get. But after picking an upgrade, you can then choose specifically from your deck which card will get the power. Once again, this would mean that you would be able to stack up 1 card and that would be it. That would be your ticket to winning. But you can easily walk around this by, once again, A, making the game even harder, or B, just make it so that every card can get only 2 upgrades at the most. That way, you don't stack up 1 card every single game. Now, besides my issues with the player not really feeling that much more powerful as they progress through, there is one more thing which I really don't like. When you die, you only lose points. Then you revive and you just continue on. I hate this, because roguelites were always built around permadeath. You die, that's the end of the run. I understand why Riot did this, why there is no permadeath. They probably did it because the players may feel like their time was wasted after they die and they got nothing out of it. But that's the point of roguelites. The fun is in knowing that the game is designed around the fact that you are not supposed to win. You only win if you know how to play and you get lucky at the same time. So Riot, please just either give the game permadeath or give us a hardcore mode, where if you lose, you lose. And speaking of which, games like Slay the Spire do one more thing. After you defeat the boss, which you usually do once you get a really overpowered deck, the game always gives you one more boss that was really designed to be unbeatable. In Slay the Spire, it is the heart at the end of the game. I feel like Lab of Legends needs something like that. If you beat Gangplank, there should be one more boss that is designed to be unbeatable. And that is the ultimate challenge. But from my perspective, that's really it when it comes to the progression. So now, let's talk about the other things. Obviously, this is a framework of the game that Riot is working on, and I can already pick out some things which I would love to change. When you play the game, everything is actually really quiet. From the map to the merchant, everything. Speaking of the merchant, when you get to a merchant, it doesn't feel like a merchant. There is the text that tells me that there is a top and a bottom shelf, but at least in something like Slay the Spire, the art shows you that you are in a store. So I would love to see at least some kind of immersion in this game as well. Just a simple art of a shelf will go a really long way. Then we get to the icons in the UI. Can anyone tell me how this is gold? XP I can get through, but gold? Please just change the icon to the golden krakens or the silver serpent, just anything that is being used as a currency in Bilgewater. And lastly, this is really just a vision of the future, but I would love to see some dialogue. In a game like Faster Than Light, every time you get an encounter, you have a few things to say. And depending on what you say, it actually changes the encounter. Maybe the enemy will ignore you. Maybe you engage the enemy straight on. Maybe you catch the enemy off guard and it lowers their health. Or maybe it reveals a new hidden path on the map. I feel like this would be a great way to expand what Riot is doing with the game right now. Give us more RPG elements and make it feel like a proper D&D. I think that's what people are looking for. So in summary, here are my 3 things which I really wanna see in this game. The players need to feel powerful. Make it so that it is easier to build the deck you wanna build, but don't take away the RNG. An extra power at the beginning is the play. Also, direct upgrades to the cards, that might actually be the best thing. Then, make the game harder. I don't care if it is just through extra difficulty, but it needs to have permadeath. Permadeath is a key component of this kind of game. And lastly, polish. More immersion, more music, better UI. Specifically the icons, please. But I just realized, you know what is by far the most infuriating part about this game? After every battle, it always pauses. And it tells you that you got some XP for your account. This is 12 seconds of waiting after every single battle. Riot, please just save all the XP and give it to us after we finish the entire run. Don't give it to us after every single battle. It interrupts the game so much. But yeah, that is it for this game mode. As you can tell, even though I do have some critique, I am very happy about what is happening here. I did not believe Riot would actually do this, but they did this. This is exactly what I wanted from Lab of Legends, and I am glad Riot is going the right direction. Now, at the beginning of the video, I mentioned that we will talk about Yordles. Yes, Yordles are coming, but you know why we are getting the extra expansion that will expand on the Yordle story? I predict that Vex is coming to Legends of Runeterra.